All right, I'm about to share an idea with you that I think is really cool, but it's going to fly in the face of everything you've ever been taught about making builds in Path of Exile. This is kind of a cardinal sin. This is something that a lot of people say, never do this, never rely on this. This is not good. Your build is bad if you're doing this. But I think we need to change that mindset. And this is going to be especially important next league for a few reasons. But what is that thing? That is the humble Bismuth Flask. You might be looking at this thinking, what is this? I've seen this, but I've never really used it. Bismuth Flask is a flask that grants elemental resistances during effect. It lasts for 8.5 seconds, consumes 15 out of 40 charges on use. And the thing that I was alluding to, that people say never do, is to never, ever rely on your flasks to cap your resistances. You have to make sure that your resistances are always capped without flasks. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems. Your flasks are going to run out. You're going to have no resistances, and that's it. Game over. I'm going to dispute that now. Take this with maybe the tiniest pinch of salt, but I'm going to explain why I think this might actually be something that you can look into adding into your builds. And I think I'm going to be using this next league. So alone, 35% to all resistances, not that impressive. However, you can roll increased additional elemental resistances during effect. This can roll as a suffix from on the lower end of tier 5 to 21% all the way up to the high end of tier 1 at 40%. So with this alone, we can be getting, let's just say, around 70 all res. This puts us in positive resistances. So this still not looking too good. Another thing we can do, and this is maybe a little bit more risky, is using Alchemist. This prefix, reduced duration and 25% increase effect. If you'll notice with quality, this still lasts for 7.9 seconds, so 8 seconds. Pop that on, we're sitting at 27%. This is going to be a lot more powerful on Pathfinders because Pathfinders with this node over here, Nature's Boon, and all these travel nodes, we're getting 50% increased effect of our magic utility flasks. For non-Pathfinder users, I'm not going to allocate that yet, but I just want to talk about something else. Let's pop on this one without that prefix. This prefix can be a bit of a bait, but the thing with Bismuth Flask is it has such a long duration. With quality, we can quickly quality this one up. It's going to be 10.2 seconds. So 10.2 seconds of duration. And it only uses about a third of its total charges when used. Think about this while mapping. Is this flask ever going to run out if you're killing monsters? If you're bossing, maybe, yeah. But even then, if you roll certain prefixes, you can get increased number of charges. This one has almost 4 uses. That's almost 41 seconds of uptime on your flask if you're not killing anything. Then you can get other prefixes that further improve that. But let's just take this little humble flask. We pop that on, and then we can also combine this with Purity of Elements. And look at that. Just this is a tier 2 roll, which requires item level 61. So you can roll this. If you find a Bismuth Flask in early maps, you can roll something like this. And with that alone, we're sitting at 51% all resistances. These two things almost single-handedly sort out your resistances. Do bear in mind, Purity of Elements is a aura, so this, you are going to have to sacrifice something if you want to put in Purity of Elements. This is not totally for free. Losing a flask slot is a big deal. Maybe now you can't use a quartz flask, maybe you can't use a granite flask or something like that, but I'll talk about why I think this is actually such a good option. Now, with Pathfinder, on the other hand, we're getting an additional 50% increase effect. And then over here, we're also getting another 5% increase effect. There's also some more increased effect down here, another 10%. So on a Pathfinder, just using this flask with Purity of Elements puts us over capped resistances. Without Purity of Elements, we're sitting at 48%. With this is the one with the Alchemist prefix. This almost caps our resistances. So you might be thinking, all right, cool. I'm totally not going to do this. This opens up so much power on your suffixes, and those suffixes are going to be extremely stretched next league. So in Trial of the Ancestors, we're going to be getting tattoos, which are going to consume, well, not consume, but they're going to alter your traveling nodes. All these little nodes, these little 10 dex, 10 dex, 10 dex, 10 int, 10 int, you're going to be able to convert those into more interesting mods like movement speed, mana reservation efficiency, a whole lot of different cool ones. These might seem insignificant. They're just a few dex nodes here and there. But on my build alone, let's just have a quick look. So on my build, I have 15 dexterity travel nodes. I have 9 intelligence travel nodes. I have 1 strength intelligent node. This is equivalent to 250 attributes. This is the equivalent of using up 5 suffixes or 4.5 with tier 1 attribute rolls. That's a lot. So we have 10 pieces of gear, each with 3 suffixes. A lot of you are going to be using unique items where you're not going to have flexible suffixes, but let's just say for the sake of it, the gear we have has 30 suffixes. If we have perfect tier 1 rolls, if I use up all of these little travel points, where am I getting my attributes from? I'm going to have to find it on my suffixes. So that's going to chomp up 5 of my 30 suffixes, right? 5 of my 30 suffixes, gone. And that's if they're tier 1. If I'm getting like 40 dex or 40 int here and there, well then this is going to use up way more of my suffixes. So we could say, let's say you have 45, 250 divide 45, that's going to use up 5.5. We can say, let's say on average, it's going to use up 6 of our suffixes. Now resistances, for our resistances, in order to cap them with suffixes, we're going to need 135% of total of each. Now, let's say we have a tier 1, or let's say a tier 2 roll of our resistances. That's going to be, the upper end is going to be 45%. So we can say 135 divide 45%. That's 3 suffixes per resistance. So we're going to have to use up another 9 suffixes of our 30. So if you're putting in your tattoos, already out of your 30 suffixes, you have used up half of them. Half of them gone, just for attributes and just for resistances to cap them. This is not even talking about chaos resistance. Now, on top of that, where are you going to get your spell suppression? Well, you need a couple of points with spell suppression. That's going to take up another 2 or 3. You want reduced mana reservation as a suffix. You want life regeneration. You also are going to want, there's loads of suffixes that are important. Chaos resistance, strength, int, maybe you're going to need more of those. And on top of that, on my build, let's just have a quick look at how many suffixes we are using. I mean, how many uniques. Mine is not a super unique heavy build, but we're still using 1, 2, 3, 4 uniques. This does have some resistances on it, but the other uniques, they don't. Well, this one has chaos res, but I mean, let's just say you're using 4 uniques on your build. Now you only have 6 rare items, the suffixes which you can play with. So 6 times 3 equals 18. You have 18 suffixes. What now? And if you have a rare weapon, are you really going to want to put some resistances on that? I don't know. I don't think so. So what the Bismuth Flask does, as humble as it may appear, and as risky as this may seem, and counterintuitive, you're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to use your flask to cap your resistances. What does this do? Well, this, along with my Purity of Elements, this gives me 9 free suffixes. With those 9 free suffixes, we can do a whole lot of stuff. I'm going to pull up a spreadsheet quickly. Everyone loves spreadsheets? Let's have a look. Okay, so for a non-Pathfinder, you have your base effect of a Bismuth Flask here. And then here are some prefixes and suffixes that we can use. So suffixes, I'm just looking at the increased additional elemental resistances. Over here, max charges, these are all prefixes that will work really nicely. So this will increase the number of charges, so number of times you can use your flask before it runs out, assuming you're not killing anything. Increased charge recovery, getting more charges when you gain charges, reduced charges per use, also more uses before it runs out, and increased duration. 40% increased duration on a 10.2 second. That's like a 14-second uptime on your flask, which you can then use 2 or 3 times without killing anything. So with the Bismuth Flask, with this suffix, we can see how many all res we're getting. And remember, we need about 135 to cap each resistance. So with the tier 1 mod, we're getting 56 to 59 all the way down to tier 5. This is actually backwards. It should be tier 1 and tier 5. This equates to a total res of 216 to 225 at the low end, 168 to 177. This frees up 3.5 suffixes. This is assuming you have tier 1 res. This frees up 3.5 tier 1 res suffixes all the way up to 4.5 tier 1 res suffixes. Now you can use those for strength, you can use it for dexterity, you can use it for mana reservation, you can use it for, you know, base spell crit, something like that, life regen. On the Pathfinder, you can then get even more effect. This is with 50% increased effect. This is going to free up, this is just the flask with this suffix over here. This can free up between 5 and 7 suffixes, just the flask alone on a Pathfinder. With Purity of Elements, we can see, now this is a non-Pathfinder, the lowest roll of the suffix frees up 6 suffixes, and at the high end frees up about 7 suffixes. And this is with tier 2 resistances. So this frees up 6 tier 2 resistances. On the Pathfinder, it can free up almost 10 suffixes, although we don't even need that many, but it can essentially offload your entire resistance needs to your flask and the Purity of Elements. So hopefully this is starting to make you see why this might not just be a meme. I'm genuinely thinking of using this. Let's just look at some examples of what you can then convert these suffixes into. Do remember, you are losing a flask slot, which could mean you're losing a whole lot of armor or a whole lot of movement speed or evasion rating or something like that, or phasing. But 9 free suffixes. Let's just say you freed up 9 suffixes by offloading your resistance to a flask. 110 strength, 110 dexterity, 42% spell suppression, and 70 chaos res. This is what you can replace it with by using that flask and Purity of Elements, or just a flask if you're a Pathfinder. Over here, 105 chaos res, 55 strength, 55 dex, 300 life regen, and 10% increased mana reservation efficiency. Another example would be 64% spell suppression. These are like tier 1 rolls. You have 4 tier 1 spell suppression rolls, 140 chaos res, 55 strength, or another example, something maybe a little more fancy, 1.5% base spell crit, 30 chaos res, 50 strength, 10 RMR, 200 life regen, Circular Gems deal 30% more elemental damage, and 28 spell suppression. So is this starting to kind of make sense? Does this sound crazy to you? Are you still never ever going to use a Bismuth Flask? I think if you are primarily playing a mapper, or if you're playing a Pathfinder, you can get away with this. With Pathfinder, we're getting 3 charges every 3 seconds, and we're getting also increased charges gained, fewer charges used, those kinds of things. I can actually pretty much AFK, and this thing is always going to have max charges. It's just always going to be on. We can watch it, and this is with the reduced duration. I don't see this running out. Let's see. All right, currently has 30 charges. Oh, it went down. Let's see. Does it go back up to 30, 25? This is very thrilling. 29. Oh, is it going to go? Oh, yep. All right, we're good. This is pretty much infinitely looping. And this isn't with like, this is with no gear. We just now, with this alone, and with our Purity of Elements, our resistances are sorted, completely sorted out. What do you think? Is this crazy talk? Are you ever going to use a Bismuth Flask on your build? I think that especially next league, this might actually be enough to free up your suffixes. You're going to be extremely stat starved. I don't think people are understanding the implication of converting all of these travel nodes into tattoos. So think about the Bismuth Flask. It's maybe not as crazy an idea as you might think. I think our thing has run out of charges. It almost has, but yeah. All right, I'm going to link the spreadsheet in the description. Are you going to use a Bismuth Flask? Tell me. I'm excited. I think this is really cool. Okay, have a wonderful day, everyone. Stay safe. Keep bismuthing, and I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.
launching exile. You're making me nervous.